Welcome to the Beehive Podcast. I'm Joy Mendoza-Gallardo from the SaaS accounting team of Scrum. If you're a finance leader at a B2B SaaS company, let me ask you, how much of your highly skilled, high-touch team's time spent on routine tasks? I'm talking about exporting CSVs from your CRMs or your accounting systems, manually inputting data to calculate revenue, and updating actuals for your budget versus actuals reports, and just lot of data entry. That manual process isn't just an annoyance. It burns money, and worse, it burns out your best people. So we do experience this in our teams. If we do manual things over and over again, and being manual is really often prone to errors, which gets pointed out, especially when they are embedded in metrics and data that are used for everything, commission payments, company value to bonus targets, it can really get challenging and it can really strain our team. So to help us understand a solution, I'm thrilled to have Ali Rizvi, the founder of TrueRev. Ali, welcome. Can you start by telling us what TrueRev does?
Thanks, Joy. Great to be here. Yes, TrueRev is a revenue management system. It's built specifically for SaaS companies. We replace the chaotic web of spreadsheets, disconnected systems by allowing finance teams to fully automate the order to cash process using software. It lets finance and accounting teams manage bookings, all of the billings, revenue recognition, and critical financial and SaaS metrics in one place. We recently have also embedded an AI tool in our app, so you can use just regular language prompts to ask questions about your TrueRev and your QuickBooks data, such as tell me about which customers are at highest risk for churn, or where are my biggest one-time expenses coming from. We've designed TrueRev really to stop that difficult, morale-killing manual work, so the team, your finance team, and others can finally operate on a more strategic basis.
Okay, so let's break it down a little bit, Ali. So let's start with that core pain. So our topic is ditch the spreadsheet. So when you see finance teams running on spreadsheets, what do you think is the real hidden cost that a CFO might be missing?
Yeah, this is a great place to start. To be honest, spreadsheets really, they're not the enemy. Spreadsheets are going to be around. I don't think they're going anywhere. They're certainly great for doing one-off analysis, but I think the real hidden cost is relying on spreadsheets and other manual things for critical, repeatable reporting. The stuff that you're having to do on a ongoing, frequent, regular basis. Reality is, look, every finance leader has some spreadsheet that they have to maintain and update on a regular basis. That's what we're trying to change eventually. Let's use one example. Imagine you're a finance leader. There's a board meeting that might be upcoming that you have to prepare for. And the first step before you prepare those to present the numbers is you have to update the numbers. And so just think of really what happens on a month-over-month basis, right? You export a bunch of data from your accounting system like QuickBooks. Maybe you export more data from your CRM so it can tell you when, you booked a customer or a group of customers. You take that information, you now have to update your master spreadsheet that you've been living in, month over month. And what do? You have to create more rows, you have to create a formula, you have to create more columns. And then all of a sudden, let's say you're doing this, and it's happened to me a bunch of times before, is you find an error. Somebody was in the spreadsheet and they changed a historical number, and now you're scrambling, basically. You have to go recheck everything. You have to make sure all the formulas work, and all of that stuff that you've been working on is now broken, right? So you end up spending all this time. I've talked to people, I've done it myself, where you literally before a Monday or Tuesday meeting, you're spending all weekend just fixing a spreadsheet. It's crazy. So the real cost definitely is the time, for sure. But it's also like just exhaustion. I mean, if you have to do this on a regular basis, and this is sort of the process that becomes repeatable, I mean, people just end up burning out, to be honest. The job gets less interesting. And so I think, sort of summing that, I think it's like a competitive disadvantage. It's not just like the uncalculated labor of doing all of those things on those weekends, in those evenings. It's the fact that so many people are spending 90% of their time just doing this, like validating numbers, fixing errors, while other people, I think, who have better processes are now analyzing them. It's
right.
doing that less. Yep. So I'll pause there, but that's how we think about it.
Yeah. And in Scrub, we really do believe in high touch partnership. That's what we aim for. Like really, more than just the reports, more than turning out numbers for our clients. We want to be that partner. So as you mentioned, giving insights, spending more time on the analysis. So I think it's hard to really be a partner when you're buried in those VLOOKUPs, those spreadsheets. So where do you see this manual model completely break down for like a growing SaaS company? Like if they continuously using spreadsheets and they want to scale, so where do you think this is breaking down for them?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you're right. It's the central kind of conflict is that, everyone who's a good client service provider wants to be high touch, wants to give that strategic angle, that strategic voice to leadership. But the manual grind of doing that the stuff that consumes all this time every month, it ultimately forces the team into kind of more low value data fixing roles. They never really become that strategic partner. Like the manual model, really where it breaks down, at least what I've seen, is right around the time a SaaS company begins to grow past, $1 million or a few $1 million in ARR. And like, why is that? It's because it breaks down usually at that point because the complexity of the data really can explode. Like suddenly you're not tracking 20, annual contracts. All of a sudden now you have 50 or you have 100. And each of the contracts may have a different start date, and some might be multi-year terms, and some may have monthly billing schedules versus quarterly. There may be now variable usage products in there. So you just think about that complexity just starts to happen as a company matures. And then all of a sudden the sheer volume of data that you're trying to pull from, like, say, for example, QuickBooks, it just becomes so much harder, almost impossible really to manage manually with any real confidence. So that's the breakdown, I think. It's the finance team, while they want to be strategic, they end up spending all their time reconciling data discrepancies between systems. And then they end up having a lot less time for the actual like high value strategic, views.
Yeah, and we're seeing it too. Like you can't be keeping, since it's highly manual, you can't be adding people doing manual work as you grow. So like it's also like counterproductive. So you mentioned about skilled experts. So like being high touch. So what do you think should a senior finance expert be doing with their time? Yeah, and then we mentioned it. Instead of just really pulling data. So we want to emphasize that, especially to our listeners, finance leaders.
Yeah, I mean, I think like what I think a skilled expert or an expert for that matter, like the expectations from a company when they hire you as a skilled expert, like what should they expect? What should they get? And I think what they should get is a leader or somebody who is focused really on two things that determine a company's future, is identifying risks and helping a company manage the risks and identifying opportunities. So like right now, most manual processes have heads of finance, strategic thinkers spending so much of their time just trying to find the data. Instead, they really should be using tools like AI to analyze it. So like, for example, instead of just reporting, hey, our churn spiked, they should be able to dig in and ask, like, why? Is this one time? Is it a large customer that left for reasons that were out of our control? Is it a systemic issue with the product? I mean, answering that question, which is churn, which is a risk thing, having the right answers and the insights, that really can change the strategy of a company, what they might do the next quarter or the quarter after. Or like, instead of just reporting on cash, which is another thing that CFOs do all the time, track, certainly for early stage companies, like they should focus on capital allocation instead, as one example. Like, for example, do we have runway to invest in a new product launch? Like, what happens to our burn if we make new hires now versus waiting a quarter or two? And I think that's where you get this like expert, right? That's where the expert helps you, because they can help you make better high stakes decisions, not necessarily just sitting and spending all their time trying to make sure a spreadsheet works, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So if manual reporting is our before picture, so let's paint now the after picture. So we're calling this AI-Augmented finance team. So what does that actually mean in practice?
Well, it's changing week over week. I got to tell you, it's really incredible, the pace of change. But I think in practice today, the way I would think about it and the way I practice it is using AI tools that are available, like right now, to do a lot of this kind of manual grunt work that might take you hours or days. Like a great example is, you know, everyone or most companies that have a budget, they track budget versus actuals on a monthly basis usually. So instead of like just spending hours manually summing the columns, updating them, running the variance between two columns, you can feed it into an AI agent like Claude, ask it to find the 5 largest variances, look that up and provide a narrative around those. You can do that in minutes. It's pretty incredible. Or like, here's another example that I don't think people are utilizing as much. Like, think about this. Let's say you're in finance and you have to review all the large deals that come through. So imagine like a sales rep sends you a non-standard 30-page contract that they're about to sign on a Friday. Instead of you reading that entire contract, feed the contract into something like GPT, if you're able to. And look for it to find those unusual terms and have it flag, say, for example, a weird payment clause. And then you can go as the expert and make the final, assessment. And I'll say one last thing. I mean, we did this recently for a customer of ours who had years of historical cohort data to understand why certain customers were leaving. And there was so much data to get through. It was pages and pages and pages of a spreadsheet. And we fed that through an AI agent. And, it pulled all this information and literally in minutes, it was able to start giving us insights. Like, it's not perfect. You have to iterate, but it's so much faster than having to scrub it yourself. So I think that's the augmented team. You have AI that can do a lot of this heavy lift, and then you can have the human expert that has that judgment, that does the actual analysis and helps make a strategic decision. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, agree. So, Ali, let me just also share, like, we have been also exploring AI in our team. So we have come across Notebook LM. So it's also, it's like GPT also and Gemini. So we feed in contracts, like you mentioned, about like if you read like 70 plus or more than 100 pages of contracts and you just want to look up or review specific clause or terms and you want to summarize it, or if you're looking into like series of contracts with the amendments and you want to analyze it as a whole. So we've been using that Notebook LM because it's different from GPT because it will only use the data or the files that you feed to Notebook LM. So it has been one of the explorations of the team as well. And it's really not about replacing humans, right, Ali? So it's just really empowering us as finance experts do our thing. So if we talk about the future, Ali, so how does this augmented model move a team from just reporting to predicting? I think you mentioned this earlier about like more complex analysis aside from the usual cash basis. So how can AI surface this cash flow variance predictions, and how does a human finance leader can use that insight better?
Well, I mean, I think so. I think about with AI, and especially as it's getting, better and better and better. It's it's so. Let's use the contract as an example, right? I mean, I mentioned that you could feed a sales contract into an AI agent and have it find the unusual clauses. So that's great. Like that's a step number one. But imagine using it in a more sophisticated way. Like think about you plug the contract into an AI agent, but at the same time, it already has actual financial data from your accounting system, say from like QuickBooks. And it also has your revenue forecast. So think about that, right? It's got now 3 different data points. It's got something that's very real time, like a contract. It has historical information about your finances from your accounting reports, and it has your revenue plan. So looking forward. And then what you do is then you have it read a complex clause in a contract and say, hey, look, this is a non-standard acceptance term. It could delay our revenue, our 500,000, say, for example, revenue target, and it could shift it from Q1 to Q3. And it's now going to create a big, huge gap in the plan that you agreed to with your board. Like, just imagine that. That's like a huge thing that today, without using AI, is just going to take a lot of manpower, like brain power and time from somebody who has to look at all of those disparate things and connect those dots. So I think that's where it could really help. But then what's left for the person, like the human, what do they do in this entire equation? I think the human then gets this really rich information, and now they take that insight and then they apply their authority, accountability, and then the strategic negotiation behind that. What I mean by that is, like, now that you have this information that you're going to have a revenue gap because of a clause in a contract, you then go talk to the head of sales and you say, hey, look, we're not signing this term because this is what it's going to do, right? Like that is what the human should be doing. Like that's the strategic insight they got from this information, and now they're using it to make a decision that's going to impact, the company. So like the AI provides that ammunition and the risk analysis, and that's done in, seconds, minutes, whatever. And the human now is sort of freed up to do that higher value work about decision making and all of that. And that's the partnership between.
Agree. So that it can be turned to like actionable steps, and then the human can now focus into the execution. Yeah. So that vision of like an augmented team, or like that person with an AI, sounds amazing, Ali. But for a listener who is currently now drowning into that spreadsheets, it also looks like a long way off. Like, what's the first step to get from those spreadsheets to this future state that we're talking about?
I mean, honestly, it's not a long way off. I think it's here, and the first step isn't to boil the ocean. It's or buy a very expensive new accounting tool or something. I think the first step is just be as simple as possible. Like pick your most painful, time-wasting manual process and fix that one thing. Like don't try to find one way to fix everything all at once. Just start small and be practical. I think for a lot of teams, the most painful process, just as one example, is the monthly budget versus actual price. It's one thing that's a pain, or preparing that for the board reporting package. So, that you're going to spend so much time. So maybe take that one file, the one that takes you 10 hours to clean up. And instead of opening up Excel, why don't you feed that into like GPT or Claude or something, and ask it to do the same thing you've been doing manually, like sum up these 5 columns and run a variance analysis against these columns. Like just do something like that. And, the first few times might take a bit, but eventually you'll create a repeatable process that you can then just follow on a month, every month or whatever. I'll give you one last example and then I'll pause. But, I was putting together like a proposal. It was a PowerPoint presentation for a client that we were looking to get, like a new customer. And they wanted to know, what is your pricing going to be? What's your solution? How are you going to do all of this stuff? And it was going to be like a slide deck, probably 10 slides or something that I was going to put together. And all I did was I took the meeting summary notes and I put them into Gemini just recently. 3.0 just came out recently. And I was honestly blown away. It took my notes, it created a deck, I think it was 8 slides, and it did it just a matter of minutes. Of course, I have to go and I have to change some of the content, but it did it a matter of minutes. I'm telling you, that would have taken me probably like half a day. And it was amazing.
Yeah. So a question I know our clients at Scrub need to tackle this would ask is about the like partnership and trust. Like how do you get a finance leader trust the AI's output? Think when we use the notebook LM and their client is really asking about have you validated the results? Like some of this like for convenience clauses, they're really like they're not really straightforward. Sometimes you really need to read through the contract and then it can be like implied. So how do you think, yeah, we can really trust AI's output, and how do you see the ideal handoff from AI and the human expert?
I mean, that's a good question. I honestly, I think trust is the wrong word. I think the word a finance leader should use is verification. If or for anybody for that matter, not just finance leader, but anybody who uses any type of AI agent, is verification. I mean, you shouldn't blindly trust any AI model more than you would trust a very junior analyst. But here's the key. I mean, verifying an AI's work, depending, of course, what you're using it for, but verifying AI's work is 100 times faster than finding an error in your own manual 10-tab spreadsheet, right? And going a little bit deeper on this trust issue, like when I hear people say, I don't trust it or it has errors, I believe that that's a fear mechanism. It's an excuse that prevents people from adopting technology that's already here. Like we're definitely in a new evolution. If and yes, AI has its flaws, but it's 99% better and faster and cheaper today than the manual process you're doing. Like your manual spreadsheet also has errors, and people just get comfortable with them. So I think the ideal handoff is this. I mean, the AI will do 10 hours of work and it'll present the final auditable report, right? Because it's going to reduce all this time. And then the human expert spends 15 minutes or whatever it takes to verify the output. You spot check, you see the data is accurate, and you build confidence through verification. And that ultimately will lead to trust.
And my honest thought about it too is on how we can further improve the inputs, because basically we're the ones inputting like the prompts. We can actually improve that, like make that more comprehensive, more like instructions are very clear and the rules, so that it can also churn out the results that we wanted. So, talking about like the urgency of this, Ali. So we sat like in the next year. So what happens when a B2B SaaS company that are still manually building their reports, what do you think will happen to them in 2026?
Yeah, we picked 2026. It's not far off. It's in less than 30 days, right? But I think the urgency is not so much a year, but it's really the urgency is starting the adoption process or changing your process now, like as soon as you can. So the question, like what happens, a company isn't going to explode on January 1, right? 2026 if it doesn't use this. But it's what happens, I think, is a pattern we've all seen before when a really significant new technology comes along. Think about like a calculator or digital spreadsheets when they came around. There's always a group that resists, like they don't trust it, or they think the technology is maybe temporary. And I think we're in one of those moments right now. It's breathtaking, and I think companies that are still doing manually things that they could use this type of technology to do, whether it's in 2026, whether it's in 3 months from now, a year from now, they're simply choosing to stick to the old way. And the early urgency really is that early adoption is what's going to help you. It's not going to hurt you. You get to learn the technology faster, use it for your own benefit, the better. So getting your team to use these tools now, even though they have flaws, I think is the only way to learn how to be more efficient. I think the companies that wait or the people that hide behind like those trust issues are the ones I think that they ultimately get left behind. It's really that simple.
Agree. So the best time is really now. So this has been so insightful, Ali. So we've gone from the pain of ditching those spreadsheets, the problem, to a clear vision for the AI-Augmented team, where technology empowers us to be strategic and high-touch partners we're meant to be. So as we wrap up, Ali, to our listeners, if you could leave just one final key takeaway, one thought that would stick to them as they look at these spreadsheets, what would it be?
I would just say, just get started. Just start using it. For those who haven't, just get started. There's no better way than to just start without asking questions and over analysis.
Yeah, so that's a great practical way to end it. And for our listeners who want to learn more about these concepts, our two teams are here to help. So Ali, if folks wants to see how TrueRev is tackling this, where they can find you.
Yeah, sure. Just go to TrueRev.com, TrueRev.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn if you want to connect there, or even just email me directly if you'd like, Ali, A-L-I, at TrueRev.com. And happy to connect.
Perfect. And for our listeners, if you're feeling like your core accounting is the bottleneck, our team at Scrub is always here to help. So you can learn more about our high-touch approach to SaaS accounting at scrub.net. We will put both the links for both TrueRev and Scrub in the show notes. So, Ali, that was a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for bringing your expertise to this show. So, to everyone who's listening, thank you for tuning in to the Beehive podcast. If this conversation sparked an idea, please share it with a colleague or leave us a review. It's the best way to help other finance leaders find us. I'm Joy Gallardo with Scrub SaaS Accounting Team. We'll see you next time.